So the infrastructure minister says his plan is working, but that doesn't mean we don't have a whole lot of questions for him just the same, right? And look who's here to answer those questions. Canada's Minister of Infrastructure, Amarjeet Sohi, is with me in our studio. Good to see you again, Mr. Minister.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for being here. I want to get into the infrastructure plan in just a moment, but ahead of that, we heard from Donald Trump last night in the State of the Union address that he's now going to push hard for a $1.5 trillion infrastructure plan in the United States. That has me wondering whether that could affect your plans here in Canada if we're now competing for suppliers, if there's a big push for building underway in the United States, and whether that might push prices up. What are you hearing? What do you think?
I think every government is recognizing that well-functioning infrastructure is the foundation for economic growth and creating opportunities and building a stronger middle class. So we are very, we understand why Mr. Trump is putting focus on infrastructure. That's what he did during the campaign, and we feel we recognize opportunities for both of countries to actually collaborate and work together on attracting the brightest people to engage in projects, and having the companies from both sides of the border bid for projects and the procurement. So we don't see any. I haven't heard any concerns.
Just because look at it. I mean, if there's this massive build in the States, does that mean a whole lot of Canadian companies that might have been focused on infrastructure programs in this country are now being called upon to do some of that work in the state? I guess while we still have free trade, could that have an effect on your plans here?
Well, during our engagement with the stakeholders, and we've been doing that for the last number of, since we got into office, we have not heard any concerns about, that this will drive up cost for the projects or lack of availability for the tradespeople or companies to bid on. So we feel that both the United States infrastructure plan and our ambitious infrastructure plan will allow us, both countries, to grow our economies and create more jobs for middle class, both on the United States and on Canada's side.
Okay, let's talk about your plan here in Canada. $187 billion over 12 years. It would seem from some of the latest numbers we've seen that the plan might not be going absolutely according to plan the way you'd like it to. And by that I mean we've seen some delays in these projects getting going and the money going out the door. You'd hope that almost $5.5 billion worth of transit and water and housing projects would be completed by this coming March. Instead, they've been pushed out 2 or 3 years in some cases. How come?
So in budget 2016, we allocated close to $12 billion for infrastructure. Out of that, the money is being dedicated for public transit to make our transit system more efficient and reliable, and improving wastewater infrastructure so people have clean water to drink. So since taking office, we have approved more than 4,000 projects with the combined investment of $35 billion. And vast majority of those projects are currently underway, creating jobs.
Right, but you set aside $12 billion for the first 2 years for phase one, and you still have $5 billion unspent. I mean, if you set the money aside to spend, presumably ahead of that, you thought, okay, this is money we think we can spend in the first 2 years, but $5.2 billion hasn't been spent.
So the way our infrastructure plan works is that we rely heavily on provinces and municipalities to advance their projects. So the only way they move forward on their projects is getting a federal commitment. So when I talk about $35 billion, that's the money that with our commitment is being delivered and being invested. So what happens, the money you're talking about, $5 billion not being spent, it's not that money is not being spent. The challenge is that we have to wait till the projects are completed, then we get the invoices from our proponents to pay for the work that has been done. So it's kind of a lag time between the project start, project completion, and when we actually pay out the actual invoices. So money has to be kept within the federal budget in order to pay in the later years.
Right,
so the money is committed, and that money is actually enabling our partners to start the construction and do the work.
Right. I'm not so much suggesting that you're not prepared to pay the money. It's that the suggestion is that it's not, and you've heard it before, it's not going out the door quickly enough, which then raises the question, is it having the kind of economic stimulus you want it to have if it's not moving at the same pace you hoped it would move at?
I think the better measure of the success of the infrastructure plan is to see whether construction is taking place or not. Right? When you look at the 4,000 projects that we have approved, and vast majority of them being under construction or the buses are being ordered, for example, because of our investments in budget 2016, close to 2,000 buses are being ordered. So those buses are being manufactured in plants, but we haven't paid any money for those buses because we're waiting for the delivery of them. And once we get the delivery,
you get receipted for it, and then the federal contribution.
And same with water, wastewater infrastructure, same with the roadway projects, recreational, cultural infrastructure. We wait till the project is completed, then we pay out the federal contribution. But those projects will not proceed without a commitment from the federal government.
Right. In fact, is that one of the problems in the process? Are you looking, because phase 2 is coming up and you want some decisions from provinces, by the end of March for phase 2, but how that's going to work. One of the things we hear from municipalities is that that's part of the issue, is that they can't push ahead with the process till it's been approved by the federal government, and then the money doesn't come back till the federal government gets the receipt for it. Is there a better way of doing it?
I think one of the best ways to deal with the issue of cash flow is to give predictability, certainty, and a long-term plan.
Right, and that's what they want.
And that's exactly what we're delivering. So under our long-term plan, which we are negotiating now with provinces and territories, we are going to give them 10-year commitments. We will tell them over the next 10 years how much money they're going to receive for water, wastewater systems, how much money they're going to receive for public transit funding,
green
how
infrastructure,
much money for green and recreational culture infrastructure. With that, they can start aligning their capital plans with the federal priorities of building stronger economy, creating jobs, and making sure that Canadians have opportunity to be part of the economy.
So what's the negotiation about? You set a March deadline to get deals done with the provinces for phase 2. Got a couple of months left here.
I am actually very proud of the relationship that we have been able to build with the municipal sector and provincial and territorial partners. I have invested a lot of time and effort. My staff has done that from day one, and because we believe that in order to be effective in delivering infrastructure commitments, we need partnership approach. And that takes time to build that relationship. And our discussions with provinces are going really, really well. And I'm very confident we'll be able to conclude those bilateral agreements with provinces by the end of March.
What lessons have you learned about the deliveries, about any bumps in the road, problems with phase 1 that you think you can fix for phase 2?
I think what we did in phase 1, we focused on kind of unsexy work. The not new, brand new projects or, cutting ribbons on subways and all that. We focused on fixing what we already have. So, those repairs are very critical. And I think that's something that previous government did not do. And
well, to be fair, that's what municipalities have been saying they need. They're talking about
for that.
Not so much, they weren't focused on new infrastructure, they were focused on crumbling infrastructure.
That's right. And they asked for that, and that's exactly what we have delivered.
I think we just heard a headline here. Canada's Minister of Infrastructure is going to make infrastructure sexy.
Well,
in phase 2, that's where we're
moving forward again. Based on the needs of the local communities, we will support them for the transformative projects, whether related to building transportation networks or public transit systems, or building greener communities by investing into new technology or into projects that help reduce greenhouse gas emissions. I think one thing that I really take pride as a minister is that we respect local decision making, that we really allow municipalities to make their own decisions, and we support them as long as the projects they're bringing forward allow us to achieve the federal objectives of economic growth and building and
but they still, it's a three-way dance. They still have to do this dance with the provinces too, because they need money from the provinces, right?
Yes, our funding is a matching funding. We ask provinces to match at 1/3 of the cost, as they have done in the past. That allows us to leverage more funding and actually get more infrastructure built.
Okay. A big feature of your future plans is the $35 billion Canada Infrastructure Bank, the government's plans.
Yeah.
it's sort of there's meat getting onto the bones now, and we're hearing that they'll actually start perhaps approving projects by the end of this year. When do you expect it'll actually start approving projects, and how much of a take-up do you think there'll be from the infrastructure bank?
Well, I am very excited about the potential that Canada Infrastructure Bank have in building infrastructure that otherwise may not be possible to be built because of the lack of resources. Despite our government's tripling investments in infrastructure, there has been quite a bit deficit in building new infrastructure. I think bank will allow us to work with the private sector to take on those opportunities. So the bank is up and running. We have the board in place. We have the structure in place. It's based in Toronto, and they're looking at a number of applications that the proponents have given us to look at, and the bank to look at, and there'll be other opportunities. So we feel that we can do more for municipal sector and provincial provinces and territories by engaging private sector to build infrastructure that is in the public interest, that Canadians need and want to have. And as long as there's as they wait for private sector's investment to be earning a rate of return, which this is well and fine because that's the one to do. But I think that partnership with the public sector and private sector will allow us to undertake transformative projects in our communities.
Okay, lots to watch for in this file, and Canada's Minister of Infrastructure, Amarjeet Sohi. Always good to talk to you, and thanks for coming to speak with me today.
Thank you so much for having me.